the Veteran Histories Project recording of Harry Minges. He was born December 25th, 1921, and served in the United States Navy during World War II. His highest rank was coxswain, and we are recording this on December 28th. It's a Wednesday morning, 2010, in Southampton, Pennsylvania. My name is Sarah Minges. I am Harry's granddaughter, and also with us is Mariah Minges-Klussman, my sister and Harry's other granddaughter, as well as Mike Mercandante, who is very graciously filming this for us. This interview is being conducted for the Veterans History Project at the Library of Congress. So, Pop.
Because you can hear the swivel when she goes back and forth.
Yep.
That's funny, that picks it up. Okay. So, Pop, can you tell us a little bit about where and when you were born?
I was born December the 25th, 1921, at Sand Lake, Michigan, Montcalm County. We moved from Sand Lake down to Lowell. I can't remember what year it was, but anyhow, I grew up in Lowell. My father passed away when I was 7 years old, and I had two brothers. One was John, my oldest brother, and Howell was next to the oldest. And there was three boys, and my mother left on the farm of 80 acres. Times was tough. So in 1941, I made up my mind that I would join the Navy to relieve some of the pressure on my mother, and I was taken. I enlisted in Grand Rapids. From there I went to Detroit. I went to Great Lakes Naval Station. I spent 8 weeks in training and came home for a month leave, and then I went back and I was assigned to the USS Augusta. I was shipped out to Newport, Rhode Island, and that's where I waited for the Augusta to come back from the presidential cruise. And then I went aboard and I was assigned to 2nd Division aboard ship.
Or can I ask you a question? You told me before a little story about when you enlisted, how your mother didn't want you to.
Oh,
Can you tell that real fast?
yeah. Shall we start?
Just
Well,
how
my-
you hitched a ride to Grand Rapids.
Well, when I went to Grand Rapids to enlist, my mother didn't know anything about it. My brother did. So I went to Grand Rapids, I enlisted, and went back. My mother signed the papers. She didn't sign them right, so I come back, and the lieutenant came out. We went out. We had an awful time getting my mother to agree to sign the papers. And she finally did. And we went back, and then from there I went on my way to the Great Lakes Naval Station, from Grand Rapids, Detroit to Grand Rapids Naval Station.
You told me a little bit about your time there. You said that you didn't really have a lot of time to make friends, but you still had some memories about fights that people would get in.
Well, we didn't, most of the time we were on training. I didn't make too many friends. Usually you got in fights if you made friends, because people didn't like being friends all the time. So everybody tried to stay to themselves. We made rifle range. I had a sore shoulder, so they put me on mess cooking, washing dishes, and I did that for a week. And then we went out on the boats early in the morning with our shorts on, no pants or shirts, just shorts and tennis shoes. Boy, was it cold. So we went out rowing every day for a week, training, came back, and we got dressed and went for breakfast. And then we went out on the rifle range for gun practice. Come back, we marched in rotation for exercises for every day. And Saturday and Sunday was time off. Sunday you went to church. And by the time that I was through training, I was pretty well equipped to go to sea.
You told me you couldn't swim, though.
Huh?
You told me you couldn't swim.
I didn't hear you.
You told me before that you couldn't swim.
I couldn't.
And what did someone tell you about that?
He's told the officer said, you either swim or sink. So I had to learn to swim, but I didn't do much at learning to swim. I couldn't. So I got through it all right.
And you had a ceremony after training. You said you marched on the playground.
Yeah, we marched on trade ground. That was the thing. After you graduated, you had to march before all the admirals and captains and lieutenants and everybody. Family, friends, mothers and fathers were there to see everybody, their sons, and graduate. And then you got your diploma. And you got your pay. You got on the bus and went to the train station. Then you went home for a month. And then you came back. And you was assigned duty. I was assigned to USS Augusta.
You said a lot of people that you were at Great Lakes with were assigned the Augusta.
Yeah. Quite a few of us went to the Augusta. A lot of them went to other places, other ships. And I went aboard the Augusta. I was in the 2nd Division, Chart 2, Powderman. My duty was deck. I helped keep the decks clean and paint. You had your turn of painting over the side of the ship. And every morning, reveille, you had to exercise. And then you got, after you got through exercising, you scrubbed the decks down. Whether it was hot, cold, or raining or what, didn't make any difference. And then you went to breakfast.
When you enlisted in 1941, it was before Japan had attacked Pearl Harbor. You didn't think that the United States was going to fight Japan at that point, did you?
No. Never thought about war.
You just thought you'd enlist and do your time and leave.
So we cruised around. We went to Portland, Maine, to practice with the caravans, bringing up what do they call it? Mines in the harbors wherever they went, if they were any. And then we went to Bermuda a couple of times, laid down there for 3 or 4 days, and came back to Newport, Rhode Island. And then we made a trip to New York for something I can't remember. But anyhow, then we went back to Newport, Rhode Island, and we landed in Newport, Rhode Island. And I was laying in my bunk when the Japs hit Pearl Harbor on December the 7th, 1941.
You told me it was after breakfast?
And after that, we started ferrying, joined the, was an escort for the USS Ranger who carried planes to South Africa for the invasion of North Africa. Made 4 trips. On the trip back from the 4th trip, I was transferred to Philadelphia for the USS Cleveland, which I put in commission. And then they kept us in the barracks. They transported us every day back and forth to over in Camden until they pulled her over to Philadelphia, and then they had bunks all ready for us to go aboard. And she was finally fitted in Philadelphia, and And then we got on the barge, which took us over to the ammunition depot. We picked up ammunition and brought it back, and we loaded. We went on a shakedown. We was out about a week. Came back. Was in for about a month. Loaded up with more ammunition and went out. Shakedown. Came back. We got Liberty. A couple days later, we sailed for Bermuda.
Before you sailed to Bermuda, you were staying in Philadelphia while the USS Cleveland was getting ready to leave.
Yeah,
You were at the commissioning?
yeah.
Was there?
I didn't say that, did I?
No.
I was transferred to Philadelphia for the new ship, which was to be put into commission on June 5th, 1941. And I was there for the commission. I am a plank owner. I have a certificate. And my granddaughter saw it, the certificate, and the piece of wood, which is about 3 by 3. It's special wood they use for planks on ships, so it doesn't absorb water. And they stopped using that, and they started making the ships with steel decks.
After the commissioning, was there a dance? Was there special dances or anything?
It was a dance and a big banquet. And your mother don't remember that, but I do.
Well,
Anyhow,
this was the time that you met your wife.
yeah, at the dance. And after the second shakedown, we came back. We had Liberty, took on more ammunition, and then we sailed for Bermuda. Bermuda, we had no idea what was going on, and I was there about 2 or 3 days, and 2 o'clock in the morning, reveille sounded. Anchor detail, man your stations. Well, we got outside the harbor. They sounded general quarters. And in general quarters, everybody goes to their battle station. Be prepared for anything. Well, about 8 or 7 o'clock in the morning, it's secured. And we all got out on deck. And the captain said, "We are joining a task force going to northern France, North Africa." Well, all you could see was ships. Whichever way you looked, you could see ships. That's all. So we was in escort. And we got to Casablanca, North Africa. We were there two or 3 days, I think. We took a torpedo, 2 torpedoes went underneath the ship, and one of them hit the screw, number 2 screw, in the shaft, and bent the shaft and the propeller, and we limped back to the States at 15 knots, keeping our fingers crossed, and no Germans would spot us, because if they had, we would have been dead ducks. We came into the Norfolk Navy Yard, which they were waiting for us, pushed it right in dry dock, pumped the water out. We was in there, I think it was 11 days. Everybody had a couple days liberty. And then when it was done, they flooded the dry dock, they pushed it out. We went on a shakedown. Big sea tugs picked up the engineers, and we were riding around through the Guadalcanal canal, and we operated out of that little island for a couple of days, and then we moved up to Guadalcanal, and for patrol and reinforced the troops, landing on Bougainville, Georgian Islands, New Hebrides, and truck. We patrolled, I guess every other night we had patrol. And then we had orders to go to Sydney, Australia. Was there for about 10 days for liberty. And then we came back, and what's next?
Let me ask you real fast, if you can talk about going through your experience going through the Panama Canal.
Huh?
Can you talk about when you would go through the Panama Canal when you were on your way from the Atlantic to the Pacific Ocean?
Well,
On
the
the
Panama
pipeline.
Canal, you get on the Atlantic side, they raise you up. On the Pacific side, they lower you down into the lake. And we stayed in the lake there overnight, and then from there we would continued on our cruise to an island out there. I can't think of the name of the island.
Do you recall how long it took to get through all the different locks of the canal?
I think we got there about 10 o'clock in the morning, and I think it takes about 4 or 5 hours.
Okay.
Because the South Dakota, New Jersey was coming back from Guadalcanal to Philadelphia to get repainted and leave for their men, and some damage to be repaired. And that was the last time I went through the canal. And then
When you were in the South Pacific afterwards, do you remember there being a lot of ships always around you? Were you on a task force at that point? Or was the Cleveland sailing around by yourself?
when we joined the task force, it was about, it was the Denver, Cleveland, the Montpelier, Cleveland, and there was another one. Four ships.
This is the North African invasion you're talking about.
No, North Africa was the only Cleveland.
Mm-hmm.
North Africa was Cleveland, the Ranger, the Augusta. I don't know how many battleships,
Okay.
and I don't know how many destroyers.
Okay.
But we always had an escort of 4 destroyers. Each ship had an escort of 4 destroyers.
So you always moved around no matter where you were with a group of 4, pretty much.
Right, we always had destroyers around.
Was there a lot of aircraft
Huh?
flying? Was there a lot of aircraft flying above you at
No.
that point? No.
No.
Okay.
If they find the aircraft flying, they usually sent the planes up from the cruisers
Okay.
for spotters, because they could look down, and if they could see into the water, and they could see if there's a submarine down there, they could spot it,
Mm-hmm.
and then they would ready out and say the Jap sub so and so place. But we never had that.
When you were sailing from island to island in the South Pacific, other than the other ships in your task force or your escort, would you be able to see anything, or was it just clear water
Just clear waters. That's
all
all.
the way around? And did you ever? I remember you telling me at one point that you would sleep on the deck if there wasn't combat or if things were
Well, we
okay.
used to sleep on top side, yeah,
Okay.
because it was so hot down below. Everybody we used to go top side, sleep, and then wait for general quarters to sound. Or when it's time for you to watch, they come along. Hey, you got watch? So you went on watch. Because when I came back from the South Pacific, I never could get warm. I mean, no, I was always hot, but I never could get warm up here. My blood was so thin. It's still thin.
One of the other things you told me about your time at this point was when you were at the Treasury Islands, and then later the Empress Augusta Bay.
Well, Empress Augusta Bay, we encountered the Japs about 2 o'clock in the morning, because they were going to land troops about around 5. And that battle lasted for about 2.5 hours. And somebody talked to the troops a couple days later, and they said they was about 30 miles away, and they said they could read a newspaper on deck from the firepower.
Can you talk about what you were doing during combat? You said that you were the powderman.
I was a powderman to see if the gun was loaded, see if the gun got the powder. That was my duty.
What kind of gun was it?
A 6-inch.
It was the, okay, 6-inch.
Yeah.
And there were 4 people, you said that
There was
would,
3 guns to a turret.
and you said that 4 men would operate 1 gun.
Yeah. Had a powderman, shell captain, and the other man in the back. When the when the powder came up, it came up a chute, and he had to make sure it came up and landed right in front of me where I could pick it up and slide it into the gun. But if it didn't, then it would be a misfire.
And the fire tower controlled the gun.
Fire
after it was
tower
loaded.
control or the pointer control. All depends on who was firing the guns.
Do you remember the sounds?
All I can remember is I have to wear these.
You zoom in to see those. So it was loud.
It was loud, yeah.
And it would that particular battle lasted, you said, for 2.5 hours.
Huh?
That lasted for 2.5 hours.
Oh, yeah.
And that was nighttime?
Yeah. We never caught the Japs at daytime. We always caught them at night. They were smart. They thought they were smart anyhow.
So you were, where you were loading the gun was underneath the top deck. You weren't out, you weren't on the top in daylight.
No, we were
down
outside.
in the
No,
dark.
we were inside.
You were inside in
We
the
couldn't
dark.
see nothing. All we saw was the guns
All the guns.
and the people.
How long did it take you, during the battle, how long did it take you to cycle through each round? Like to load the gun, shoot it, load it, shoot
Like
it?
that.
Really?
Like that. About 6 seconds. It took about, well, from the time the shellman got the shell off the hoist and put it on the breech, and the guy that operated what do they call it? It pushed the shell in, then he had to bring it back out so I could put the powder on, and he pushed that in. Say it would took about 10 seconds. From the time we loaded the gun and the time it was fired, it was about 10 seconds. Because it was boom, 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 boom. That's all it was. One right after the other.
After combat was over, after the battle was over, what was the protocol then? Did you just
The protocol then was
relax?
relax, get back to port, get the ammunition ship alongside, and reload up with ammunition.
Was there a cleanup that you had to do after firing the guns?
No, that was all thrown over the side.
It was all from the other side?
Yeah.
Wow.
The what do they call them? The blacksmiths. I can't think. Anyhow, they were on top side, throwing the shells over the side.
Oh, okay.
They wore earmuffs, earplugs in their ears. Otherwise, they would have been deaf. But that's. We never saw a shell casing or anything when you come out of the turret. They were all gone. Never had to clean up anything. All we had to do was bring the ammunition aboard and send it down to the where it was stored down at the bottom of the ship. When the shells came up, there was a gunner's mate down in the where the shells were kept. He had earphones, and they would tell him to set the fuse for 5 seconds, 10 seconds, or 4 seconds. Just enough so before, when we left the gun, it traveled just far enough for that to blow. if it was a fuse was set on the end. Otherwise, it was armor piercing. They'd take the fuse out and they'd put an armor pierce on there, a metal. What they screw a metal piece on there, so with a point on it, so when it hit, it went in. What the heck was that called? But we were always glad to get out of battle. It was a relief, because the time you're at general quarters, you go to general quarters at 7 o'clock in the evening, and you stay there all night at the gun station. Stay there all night. Same way on patrol. Stay there all night.
At the Empress Augusta Bay, that earned the USS Cleveland a Navy Unit Commendation Star.
Huh?
The Cleveland got a commendation star for that battle
Yeah.
at Empress Bay.
Yeah.
Did anything special happen on board, or is that something
No,
that
it's
happened
just
later?
there were all commendations for the battles.
Okay.
I have Atlantic and Pacific. I think I have 4, 5. I think I have 7 bars and 2 bars. Atlantic has a star and Pacific has a star. But I lost my bars. I don't know. I had them on my cap when I went to a reunion, and I lost them. I can't get them back. So I can't tell you what they were all for. I can't tell you what each one was for.
At this point in time, it was about November, December of 1942. No, 1943, we're at December. And you left the Cleveland then.
I left for Cleveland in December of '43.
And you said you got off the Cleveland somewhere in the Solomon Islands?
Either the Solomons or New Hebrides. I can't remember
Okay.
which.
And then you caught a different ship back to the United States, to the
They
West Coast.
Put us on the Ranger, which had been torpedoed, which was sending back to be repaired to a certain place so they could bring her back to the States. And then we got a merchant ship from there back to Frisco.
San Francisco.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the merchant ship, every time it hit a wave, felt like it was breaking apart. And then, let's see, I came home.
You spent 2 months at Mare Island at that point.
Yeah, I came home, and I reported into. No, I went back to New Paris, Treasure Island,
Mare Island.
Mare Island, and
Then
I got the CB. Was shipped out to Portland, Oregon, put the CB in commission. Then we came back to Frisco and laid there. I think we laid there for about 4 weeks. I'm not sure.
And the Seabic was refueled, carried fuel and
Went
gas.
down to San
and oil.
Pedro to pick up oil.
Okay.
And when the Seabeck was empty, it was about 8, 9 floors above water.
And when you fueled up again, you'd sink.
Yeah, and then when you get fueled again, you can reach over and touch the water. And my crew, the crew's quarters where I was in, right over the aviation gas. The aviation gas was in the middle with fuel oil and water on the sides. And if you got hit in the center, boom.
Could you smell the gas in your quarters?
No, you couldn't smell it. Because our sister ship, when they were in the Philippines, our sister ship got bombed, and the bomb hit the center. Nobody was left alive. Just blew everything up.
What ship was that?
I can't remember the name of our sister ship. She was the same as the Seabeck. There was only 2 of them built. They were fleet oilers. And was I glad to get off of that?
Well, in June of '44, you left the West Coast for Pearl Harbor on the Seabeck. And that's when you said a water pump broke.
Yeah.
And so you traveled back through Hawaii in that summer and back down to New Hebrides.
Yeah,
where you were operating out of.
New Hebrides, yeah. That's where all the ships had moved up to, New Hebrides.
Okay. And soon after that, you went back home to Philadelphia.
Yeah, I got transferred back to States for another ship.
And that's when that was fall of 1944 when you married Grandma.
Yeah. Then I went back. I went through amphibious training, and I was ready shipped out. And the Red Cross came up and said, throw me out of line, and told my mother was being operated on. So I came home, 14 days.
This is in December of that year.
Yeah, and I went back.
Your mother was okay after the surgery.
I went back, and I had to wait. I think I waited about 2 weeks before another crew was ready to go to Portland to pick up another ship, the Cleveland.
The Clearfield.
Clearfield, rather. And then we came back to, where did we come back to? Oh, we went to San Pedro and picked up troops, American troops, soldiers.
So the Clearfield was it transported troops?
Yeah.
And
She was attack transport.
And what was your role above the Clearfield?
Well, I was a deckhand.
Mm-hmm.
I was rated man. And then I was assigned a boat.
What does rated man mean?
Huh?
What does rated man mean?
Well, you had charge of so many people, or he was in charge of a boat.
And what was your title was coxswain?
Coxswain, yeah.
Coxswain. And that's what you did the training for?
That's when I went through training at San
was-
Pedro for duty for the boats.
So on Clearfield, you would steer the landing craft
Yeah,
to shore.
yeah. And let's see, we landed troops at. We picked up troops. Where did we pick up the? I can't remember where we picked up the Chinese troops, but we were glad to get rid of them. And then we picked up another load of troops. I think they were either Marines or Army. We landed them at Hiroshima.
And this was after the bomb was dropped on Hiroshima?
Huh?
Is this before or after the bomb was dropped on Hiroshima?
That was, well, they dropped a bomb on Hiroshima, on Nagasaki, right after the invasion of Hiroshima.
Mm-hmm.
That's when they dropped. And then they dropped another one about 2 weeks later.
Mm-hmm.
And
It was after that you were transporting these troops that you're speaking about.
then we picked up the, I can't remember whether it was the Army or Navy, because we was in the Philippines. We left the Philippines and headed for Japan with the troops. I can't remember where they were, whether they were Marines or Army. Anyhow, we got them, went to unload them, and we couldn't unload them because
Typhoon.
see, I told you I wouldn't remember things.
I see right. You told me yesterday that there was a typhoon.
Typhoon,
that's
that
why
was
you couldn't-
Okinawa, yeah. That was an invasion of Iwo. I forgot about that. Had the troops, yeah. The troops are coming off the ship, and the typhoon started to hit. Of course, I had troops on board, and the waves is pretty high, about 10, 15 feet high. So they called us back to the ship. They took the troops aboard.
You said the seaman
And
missed
my
the
poor
hook.
seaman, he went to reach up for the hook, to hook onto this hook. No hook. So, he went down, then came back up again. And he grabbed the hook, and we went aboard.
You said you were the last craft to get pulled aboard at that time.
Yeah, landing craft. Took the hook and left us.
You told me another story about when you loaded troops at one point, and the lieutenant, you had trouble with the lieutenant.
Yeah, that was Hiroshima. He took troops, landed troops, and the front was left down. The sergeant said, "Let's go, Lieutenant." he reneged. He says, either get off or you know what. I won't say what the other word he said, but the lieutenant, he guess he realized what it was sergeant was talking about, because I was sitting up there with a gun in my hand, and the troops got off.
When you were transporting troops from the Clearfield to the islands, were there a lot of ships and around you and aircraft in
Oh,
the
yeah.
sky?
Yeah. You had cruisers, battleships, destroyers, all bombarding the island. Planes dropping bombs on the island. And the Japs was really dug in up there on the Coral Islands. They had their bunkers. They must have blew holes up, built them bunkers up there. And then we left there. Picked up troops and equipment someplace and dropped them off in the Philippines.
Now, when you were above the Clearfield and you were transporting people back and forth from ship to shore, was this the point when you were witnessing things like casualties? You were witnessing, did you witness casualties on the shores,
No, on the beach.
on the beach?
You see Japs laying on the beach, guts hanging out, boarding. They didn't care where they killed them at. But that's what you saw. That's why I don't talk about the war.
It was both sides.
Huh?
There were casualties from both sides that you would see.
Oh, yeah.
Did you ever, whenever you're transporting troops, you had a gun. You said you had a .45 submachine gun.
Right.
In case you had to run off the craft with the
Right.
troops. Did you ever have to do?
I was lucky.
Did you ever have to use that machine gun?
No. I think it got salt water soaked, so it couldn't be fired. No, I never had to use it. 45 I never had to use either.
Where were you when the Allies dropped the bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki? Do you remember that?
Yeah, I remember. I was in the Philippines when they dropped them. Yeah.
Could you see the mushroom cloud, the giant boom of light?
I never
at all?
saw anything of it.
No?
No. Because when we took the troops and the convoy to Tokyo, we went by the USS Missouri when Nagasaki was, and what the heck is his name? The general. Anyhow, they were signing the treaty.
The treaty.
We could see them signing, and we passed them. It was about 9 o'clock in the morning.
They were standing on.
Yeah, we're on the forecastle signing the treaty, both of them.
That was in September.
Yeah.
I have
What was the
He's
guy's
got a copy
admiral's
of it.
name?
MacArthur? Here.
MacArthur. General MacArthur.
You have a copy of the Instrument of Surrender that was signed.
I
by-
got a copy someplace.
Yeah, it's right here.
Oh.
It's right here. That was signed by many different people.
And you can't understand who wrote it.
Well, yeah, no, not the Japanese signatures, no. But this, yes, the second day of September. So
Yeah.
you sailed by when this
Yeah.
was taking place.
Yeah.
9 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
9:04 it says. Were you relieved?
Huh?
Were you relieved to know that the war was ending? Did you realize that the war was over then?
Yeah. We knew it was over with. So, well, we heard that when they dropped the second bomb, that's when Japan sent word to what's the president?
MacArthur?
No, not MacArthur. Well, the president then,
Truman?
Truman. We would sign the war was over with. They didn't want no more of it because there were so many people killed. There's still people got Well, the families have problems with it still out there.
Do you remember reading our newspapers or listening to radio?
We had no
listening to
radio.
Well, even when you were at home on leave and just wishing for the end of the war or hoping, did you have any sort of idea when it would end?
Well, see, they didn't, as far as I know, they didn't let much of that being broadcasted.
Okay.
Because your newsmen, reporters that were with the troops, that was all edited before it. They got was left wherever they were at.
So there were newspaper people or journalists aboard
Yeah.
your ships with you.
Yeah. No, they went aboard. We had no journalists aboard
Okay.
ship. They were always with the troops.
They were all there with the troops.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry.
You had, oh gosh, all them journalists are dead now. Walter Cronkite, he was one of them. Ed McMahon, he was another one. They're all gone now. There was a whole bunch of them over in Germany and Pacific. But
Were
they
you-
weren't allowed to send anything home that would infect the troops.
Did you have any? Were you glad about where you were assigned? I mean, you could have been in the South Pacific, or you could have.
I had
Been
to go
around
where I
the
was assigned.
Hmm?
I had no choice.
Yeah, but would you have rather been in one place?
I'd
or
rather
the
been
other?
in the United States.
Well, obviously,
The base.
anyone would have been happier there.
Well, I put in for shore duty in Manila. I didn't get that. I put in for shore duty in Philadelphia. I didn't get that. I put in for shore duty in one other place. I can't think. Anyhow, I didn't get that either.
That was during the war you put in for shore duty?
That was just after, when I came back the second time, the
Yeah.
last time.
After the Clearfield,
Because I figured on serving out my time, 6 years. But
you said that you got off the Clearfield in December of
Yeah.
1945,
right,
and you got off in Seattle, Washington.
it was either Seattle or Taconia.
And then you went home to Philadelphia for about a month for leave.
Yeah, and then I reported into the naval base, and I was down there, and then they sent me back to the West Coast.
I just realized I forgot one little thing about one story from when you were on the Clearfield. You were on that for, maybe 2 months after the war officially ended.
Right.
And you told me actually on our drive over here today about the stories about the pollywogs and the
Oh,
shellbacks, and how
That was after the war was over with.
when you crossed the equator, it was during the war, so you didn't have a
No.
ceremony.
Well, if you were a pollywog and you crossed the equator and you had a bunch of shellbacks, you better hide. That didn't make any difference. We were found anyhow. They would save the garbage for about 2 weeks. They would dump it in big barrels and leave it sit in the sun out on the deck until it stunk. Turn your stomach. And they made a chute about 20 feet long and poured all this garbage in the chute. And then we sent the pollywogs through.
Were the pollywogs the newbies?
Huh?
The pollywogs were the new guys?
Yeah.
They were the ones who hadn't crossed the equator. Oh, okay. And the
And
shellbacks hadn't crossed the equator.
we had every shellback had a piece of canvas about an inch thick, about four strips sewed together, about 4 inches wide, and a little short board soaked in salt brine for about 2 weeks. And the pollywogs would try to get it and throw it overboard, but they didn't succeed. So when they were going to the chute, and when they got out the other chute, bing! And then they got washed down with a hose, seawater,
You told me that.
and they got the clothes were thrown over the side.
You told me that you found out that the captain was
Yeah.
pollywog.
The commander found out that the captain was pollywog. And he announced over the loudspeaker, all shellbacks report to the forecastle. The captain was a pollywog. And the commander said while they were on the bridge one day, he said, Captain, tomorrow you're going to get to work. The captain never said a word. Because I guess he figured there wasn't anything he couldn't do.
So you all got to kind of go after.
They
the
all
captain
ganged
with
up
your-
on him. They all ganged up on him all the way down.
You have one of the things you gave me was an enclosure from the USS Clearfield, dated January 1st, 1946. Actually, I think this might have been right after you got off the boat, but it talks about the 4th of July. It says, during the first of these trips to New Guinea, the 4th of July was celebrated by playing host to His Imperial Majesty Neptunus Rex as the Clearfield crossed the equator that day. The shellbacks were decidedly in the minority, but after a ceremony lasting 4 hours, 398 polywogs were initiated into the mysteries of the deep. The ceremony was thorough and complete, and every polywog could truthfully lay claim to being a genuine shellback. Did you give them like a silly form that said something about Neptunus Rex?
Well, they got a form, but it was filled out. They got a card. They were a shellback. I got one someplace, but I can't find them. A lot of stuff. What I wanted to show you yesterday, my discharge card, I can't find that either. I don't know what happened to it.
So you said you got off, fast forwarding again, I'm sorry. You got off in Seattle, December 45, went to Philadelphia for a month, and then you went back to Mare Island,
Yeah,
and you had new orders.
that's when I got. My line's blank from there. I can't remember.
You said you were on the Denver again, or you were at the Denver at that
Denver,
point.
yeah.
And you found out that you could request for
Yeah, I found out I
discharge.
could get discharged on a certain program. Well, I wasn't discharged. I could go home and then be discharged after my leave was up. So I didn't get discharged until 5 December 46.
Mhm.
That's when I was discharged.
What'd you do after that? Well, he was on another ship still after the Denver.
No, but when you came home, what was it like to come home? Did you just sort of like
Well,
move in with Granny and that was it?
when I come home, your grandmother was open arms, glad to see me. And before we were married, I was going back to the West Coast. And there's a troop train derailed in St. Louis. And it came over the radio. And of course, I was on another train headed for San Francisco on not a troop train, a regular train. And when I got to Frisco, there's a telegram waiting for me, asking if I was all right. So I called your mother, said I was all right. I wasn't on that train.
He was worried about you.
Yeah, I wasn't on that train. I guess that's about it.
Shortly thereafter, you were while you were waiting to be discharged, you were at home, and you said you were kind of traveling back and forth between Philadelphia and the Chesapeake Bay when you were on the YMS.
Yeah, that was after I left Clearfield.
Mhm. And you were doing minesweeping?
Yeah. We
Was
didn't
that-
do a minesweep. We just sit there and we went to school. That's what all we did was went to school. We didn't do any minesweeping. Ship never left port. You should go aboard ship, then you get off ship and go next day. 9 o'clock you go to school. Come home about 3. Back aboard ship, get your dinner. And that was it.
What kind of school?
Then, huh?
What kind of school?
Minesweep.
Minesweeping
okay, minesweeping
school.
school.
Minesweep and laying mines.
These are water mines.
Huh?
These are water mines.
These big mines. It blows up a ship if you got hit them.
Here's your honorable discharge from December 2nd, 1946 from the Navy.
Or my,
Your separation orders are in here as well.
yeah,
They all have the same date.
Captain U.S. Navy, by directed.
When you went home to live with Grandmom, did you have any trouble kind of getting back into normal civilian life?
Well, I had a little trouble getting back into civilization. But your mother took care of that. So, I
How'd she
did all
take
right.
care of that?
Huh?
What did she do?
Yeah. What did she, I can't
Did she
remember what she
introduce you to people? Did
I
you-
can't remember
did
what
help
she
you
did.
get-
I
she
can't
help you get a
remember.
job?
I can't remember, hon.
Um,
Because your grandmother had a lot of ways of getting around things. And still does.